We on Five Sports Podcast, The Spot, season number 5, episode number 8. And yeah, we're here at the weekend. Finally here at the weekend, man. Hope you guys have had a great, productive, as well as a safe week as we mosey on along into the weekend. Final weekend of the beautiful month of September. We're finally in fall season. Finally in some of the best times across the sporting landscape. And if you're first time listening, we on Five Sports Podcast, The Spot. We provide high five takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And if you're OG of the show, I appreciate the check-in once again. We appreciate all the love and the feedback. Woo, boy, I'm loving this weekend, man. So a lot of good matchups this weekend across the landscape. We got National Football League going into week number 4. There's some teams out there, 6 teams that's 0-3 going into week number 4. This is basically their season on the line pretty much. Also, we got some 3-0 teams going into week number 4 as well. You know, one of the surprise teams across the National Football League is those Indianapolis Colts and Danny Dimes. They 3-0, you know, moseying on along. Got the Buffalo Bills who 3-0, you know, moseying on along. You got the Philadelphia Eagles 3-0, moseying on along. So, and there's a nice little sandwich of teams right in the middle. Some of them 2-1, some of those 1-2. Big time 1-2 matchups. Probably, in my opinion, the best 1-2 teams matchup probably in NFL history, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Baltimore Ravens, you know, this week. So definitely going to be previewing that game, getting into that game and checking that one out this weekend. Also, Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball now is the final weekend of the season for them. It's next week. It is playoff time. Man, there's been a lot of teams that, woo, boy, I couldn't believe the Detroit Tigers, man. I just don't get it. This is a team that had a 15-game lead in July. And right now, they're hanging on by a thread to even get in. The Cleveland Guardians have caught them in that AL Central. So that's intriguing. Shout out to my man Kyle Riley, you know, hitting his 60th home run of the year for him. Big time catcher slugger for the Seattle Mariners. He's had an outstanding season. You know, the Philadelphia Phillies have had a good season. Milwaukee Brewers on the National League side as well. Can't forget about my Cubbies. First time in the playoffs in the last 5 years. You know, the Dodgers as well, them winning that NL West, you know, not quite the season that they would anticipate it this year. A lot of people predicted them to win 100 games this year. They fell short of that, but they won the division. Let's see if they're able to ramp up, as we know this is the final season for Clayton Kershaw. Also, can't forget about college football. College football, man, there's some good matchups across college football this weekend, man, and you know, we seen some good ones last week. You know, I make sure that, you know, I catch at least one primetime college football game, man, over the weekend. We got a good one jumping off tonight, matter of fact. Florida State 8-0 on the season. They surprised a lot of people, me included, especially the dumpster fire has been the last couple of seasons, man, down in Tallahassee. They taking on Virginia tonight on ESPN. And I'm liking what I'm seeing from Florida State, man. Let's see if, you know, they're able to continue their winning ways moving forward, man, especially after what we've seen the last couple of years for them. Another surprising team on the tip in college football, surprisingly, is the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets down here in the ATL. You know, they ranked 18th, you know, so far this, 16th so far this season. This team is 4-0. You know, they got a clip with the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. And this game will be played in Winston-Salem. I'm liking Georgia Tech in that one, man. They've had a surprise season. You know, you got USC and Illinois locking horns, man, on Fox on noon. My Illini, man, boy, I want to throw up in that Indiana game, man. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, we got straight steamrolled. Steamrolled in Indiana, man. What an outstanding game by the Hoosiers last week. But my Illini, man, ranked 23rd on the season. They take on USC, who 4-0 on the year. My Illini 3-1 on the year. This is a Big Ten tilt. And so this is going to be exciting. This game will be played down at Memorial Stadium, lovely Memorial Stadium down in Champaign. Been there many times over. But the big matchup to me, and can't forget about LSU and Ole Miss. You know, that's a classic matchup down in Oxford. LSU coming in, Brian Kelly 4-0 this season. His best start since he's been a head coach down there in LSU. They go on the road, taking on 4-0 Ole Miss. Ole Miss 2-0 in the SEC, and LSU is 1-0 in the SEC. So that's going to be a tilt. That game is going to be played at 3:30 on ABC. To me, that's a pickle, man. I'm definitely going to be watching that one, though, because to me, whoever wins this football game kind of put themselves in a position maybe to make a run this season. We'll see what it do, but that'll be one I'll be checking out. And you can't forget, if we talking about the SEC, you can't forget about Georgia and Alabama. Georgia ranked number 5 on the year, man. They 3-0. Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, a lot of people want his head on a stick down there in Tuscaloosa. They ranked 17th on the year. They 2-1 going in on the season. And so we'll see, man. To me, this is the battle of the quarterbacks, straight up and down. Whether it's Gunnar Stockton for Georgia, who I was lukewarm on, man, but he showed me something in that Tennessee game. You got Simpson on the other side for the University of Alabama. To me, this game is a huge game, played up in Athens. Can't wait, just to check that one out. And so we got some exciting matchups across college football without question. We got the NBA. The NBA training camps have started. We had the media day jump off the other day across the NBA. Just various teams, man, just was kind of just checking it out. Basketball right now, man, is just in a position where you got the Oklahoma City Thunder, got the belt, defending NBA champions right now. The West is loaded. The East is really to be determined. We got some injuries, just coming into the season, especially for the Philadelphia 76ers. You got, Joel Embiid out. You got your man PG Paul George out. And there's no timetable when both of these gentlemen will return. Joel Embiid, man, just pick a body part. Is probably hurt right now. This guy's just trying to get himself back on the mend, man. He's just been perennially injured the last 3 seasons, pretty much since winning his MVP award. Paul George, they paid a big bag for him to come out there to Philadelphia, and he's been banged up the whole time he's been there in Philadelphia. We got McClain, man, the guard, formerly from the University of Duke, or Duke University, rather, for Philadelphia. He got another injury, a thumb UCL injury. Not sure when he'll be able to be back. And so there's some teams that coming into the season I'm kind of lukewarm on. We'll put our foot into the NBA, man, once we get a little bit more closer kind of into the season a little bit and kick game just across that. But other than that, man, we're going to get right into it, man. I got my Big 5 coming up as well. My Big 5 NFL power rankings for this week. Also, I'm going to preview week number 4 coming up. But first and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on 5 Sports Podcast. The Spots. We gonna get right into it as promised. Week number 4 across the National Football League. Just my look going into week number 4. This is an interesting closeout week for the month of September. Usually through 4 games, you have a pretty good grasp of what you have from a talent standpoint, within your organizations. And it's really about, guys just going out there and perform through the first month of the season just to kind of see where your team is at. A lot of that is dependent on the schedule. We got, some winless teams out here. I think it's 6, 0-3 teams, man, going into week number 4. So for some of these teams, man, if, some of those 0-3 teams lose this week, the season is definitely over. I mean, you can't bounce back even with a 17-game schedule being down, 0-4 for the first month of the season. But there's some good games, man, across the slate in week number 4 we're going to get into. And in the first game we're going to get into is a team that last week, man, they defense looked like the 86 Giants, the 85 Bears, the steel curtain in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. And I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings. This is a team that, had a young quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. He been out. Looks like he's going to be out for a couple more weeks. You got Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, not so long ago was spearheading the team that went on to win the Super Bowl, but he was unhealthy to play, and that was the legend of Nick Foles. But he's back. He's back with the Minnesota Vikings with a defense behind him and a running game with Jordan Mason. Looked elite last week. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers, on the other hand, they come in this week 2-1 on the year. I was very intrigued when they acquired Aaron Rodgers in the offseason. We all knew that matchup and marriage was inevitable. But through the first 3 games of the season so far, I wouldn't say that, Aaron Rodgers is, an elite quarterback in the National Football League, but a still very good one. And a good enough one, if you build a team around him, just especially on the defensive side of the ball, you might have a shot out here. What I've seen for Pittsburgh through the first 3 weeks of the season, that this defense is not the same. I was a little bit questionable about, some of these guys are getting up in age in Pittsburgh. The Cam Haywards of the world. TJ Watt just got that big bag of money. And so, I just think that for Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin, it's really about surviving. And this is a team that, with Mike Tomlin, longest tenure head coach, one spot in the league, is that his teams are just going to try to grind through and try to have a positive record coming out of September. And this is their shot. Now, this game will be played up in Dublin, Ireland, man. Shout out to the people in Ireland across the pond. This is a big time event for them. This game will be played in the United States at 9:30, I think, Eastern time. So, if you're on the West Coast, man, this game will be played, full day in the morning pretty much for you on a young Sunday to kick off the week number 4. Now, for me, this is an intriguing game. I do feel, though, that the Pittsburgh Steelers win this game. I just feel from a Pittsburgh perspective is that they've been kind of under the radar. I mean, you 2-1 on the year. People are not, just running to, the hot take desk to just, spit about Pittsburgh. But this is a team that if they knock off the Minnesota Vikings and they go 3-1 through the first month of the season, I would say that the acquisition of Aaron Rodgers is a success. I mean, he's got 7 touchdowns and 3 interceptions through the first 3 weeks of the season. And you'll roll with that if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers coming in. If I was able to wave my magic wand before the beginning of the year and said that your team would be 3-1 through the first month of the season, and your boy Aaron Rodgers would be playing, some good football, not elite, but good football, Steelers fans will take that all day, man. Straight all day. And another game that we want to get into, man, in week number 4 is a game played down in Hotlanta. I won't be going to the game, even though I'm a rock throw away, man, from the Atlanta Falcons and Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The Commanders come into this game with Jaden Daniels injured. The Falcons last week, their offense was just straight hot garbage. I mean, got donutted, by a rival in the NFC South and the Carolina Panthers. We all know that the Carolina Panthers, no disrespect to the Panther fans out there in the Carolinas, but we all know that Carolina's not world beaters. And I was surprised. And I'm going to just go ahead and put it out here. I'm not sure about Michael Penix. And I had my reservations about him when the Atlanta Falcons traded up to get him with Kirk Cousins, who was, the $200 million man. And I'm like, wait a minute here. This is a Michael Penix, and I'm not trying to throw no shade on him, but this is a guy that's had a long track record of injury. I think he's got 2 ACL injuries. He has a stockpile of injuries, so he's not the most, Lamar Jackson type or a guy that can just, straight beat you with his legs. He's a guy that's dependent on throwing the football, and guys like that, you got to have a good offensive, scheme, a good offensive coordinator to make the whole situation work. I mean, they got some pieces down here in Atlanta with Bijan Robinson and obviously Drake London. But I haven't been happy from the play calling from the offensive side from the Atlanta Falcons. So to me, this is a must-win game for them, because if they go down 1-3 of the year, I don't know about this team. I already, thought coming into the year that the Falcons wouldn't really be a playoff team, because I just think that, the NFC South is really Tampa's to lose, even though Atlanta won, Atlanta beat, the Bucks, 2 times last season on their, playoff run with Baker Mayfield. But say less. I feel coming into this game, man, is that this is going to be a situation where the Atlanta Falcons playing at home, they're going to have a lot of heat on them as far as, just the weight of the world as far as not going down 1-3 on the year. Defense has actually been playing so far good for the Atlanta Falcons. I got to tip my cap. They finally kind of got that right, but now the offense is a regression. I believe that if the Commanders, who has Scary Terry McLaurin, is hurting this game, it looks like he may not be available on Sunday. We obviously got Jaden Daniels. He's kind of iffy, but I believe he will play coming up on Sunday. I got the Atlanta Falcons in this game, man. I think the Falcons win this game. I think they win it by a field goal. I think it's going to be an ugly play game. Ugly kind of watch game, back and forth, penalties and things of that particular nature. I'll go out here and throw out a score. I think the Falcons win this game 21-17, man. I just think that at the end of the day, Falcons got to stand up. The defense is playing well. Finally, maybe we may see this week where the offense kind of catch up a little bit to the defense. I got the Falcons in this one, man. Then in week number 4, there's another game that's kind of interesting on the slate for me, and that's the Buffalo Bills taking on the New Orleans Saints. And this game will be played up in Orchard Park, home turf for the Bills Mafia and the Buffalo Bills. The reason why I want to talk about this game, man, because so far through the first 3 weeks of the season, the Buffalo Bills look like they may two-step themselves to the Super Bowl finally since the 1990s. Now, most people feel that straight out the Buffalo Bills is going to dump truck the New Orleans Saints, especially having traveled from New Orleans up to Buffalo. I just think that, the Saints, we haven't really seen nothing from Spencer Rattler from a standpoint of like his hope on the season for the Saints. This is an 0-3 team. They're just, their whole manhood is basically on the line in this game. I'm not finna predict no upset special, but I do think that the New Orleans Saints, they play inspired football. For the Buffalo Bills, it's really about, a trap game. You can't get in a situation where you just, coming in, you already know what time it is, man. They got to strap them up. And so this is the reason why, I preview this game a little bit, because I think that Josh Allen is really for him. He got the Superman cape on, but this is a game where you may believe that Buffalo may be able to get some of these other little pieces on their offense kind of more going, and, the Colemans of the world, because I said it a couple episodes ago. I think that some of these receivers in Buffalo, one of them got to show that they're a dependable number one receiver. Because as much as people love Buffalo, as much as you can criticize Josh Allen, they really haven't had a number one since Diggs has left town. And, his whole situation was contentious on the way out of the door. And I still think that until that kind of happened, that they have a Pro Bowl caliber receiver up in Buffalo, I'm not sure if they're able to get as far as what they want to get to. And so we'll see, man. Obviously, I got Buffalo, man, in this game. I think Buffalo will be able to, at minimum, throw up 35 points in this game. I got it, man, 35, man, to 10, the Bills. But this could be an upset special. That's why I want to see, just a tenor for Buffalo. Obviously, they should dump truck this team, man. But we'll see what it do, man, in that matchup as well. Then there's a matchup where we finally got my man old Russ out of there, man. Shout out to Russell Wilson. There's been a lot of debate across, just the sporting landscape, whether or not, Russell Wilson is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think that there's some quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame that Russell Wilson has had a better career than. I feel that also, too, the National Football League over the past probably, I would say 5 years or so, they've let a couple guys in that was kind of on the borderline. And if you on that mode kind of with it, then, a guy like Russell Wilson, which literally one play away from being a two-time Super Bowl winner, I think that, if they don't throw that pass, and Pete Carroll being involved in that and not handing the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, I think this wouldn't even be a question. So that's just crazy how the game go, man. But nevertheless, we got Jackson Dart making his debut for the New York Giants. This is a young man that the Giants picked in the first round out of Ole Miss, taking on them Chargers. And Jim Harbaugh, they're working his magic again. Justin Herbert has been playing some outstanding football so far this season. Probably if I had my MVP, jump off right now, he'd probably be in the pole position in that. And, that's going to be coming down the pipeline with my Big Five. But we're going to hold off to week number 4 before we do our Big Five MVP jump offs. But anyway, this game is played up in New York. The Giants, their season is on the line. They're like 0-3. A lot of people don't think that they're going nowhere. A lot of people think that, Shane, the general manager up in New York, his head is going to be on the guillotine. We also have Brian Daboll. A lot of people feel his head is going to be on the guillotine, head coach of the New York Football Giants. I think the Giants play inspired football just in this one. I think that they'll be able to run the ball a little bit on the Chargers, because I like Scatterboo, even though Tracy is injured a little bit, right now. And I got to roll with the Chargers in this one. I just think that, Harbaugh is taking the training wheels off of Justin Herbert. I do think that the running game, obviously Najee Harris, out with the Achilles injury. His season is over, but I think of Marion Hampton, and I think that Harbaugh will be able to find a way to kind of mitigate the run game and keep Justin Herbert protected in big-time plays to Quentin Johnston and, just the forte of weapons that they have, out there in Los Angeles for the Chargers. But I think the Chargers will be able to win this football game, man. I just think they're a better football team. I think that they see themselves in that Tier 1 landscape in the National Football League so far. So I got the Chargers in this one, man, over the Giants. I got the Chargers winning this game, man, 27-14. And this is a game coming up, man, that is very interesting in this 1 o'clock window to me. Because we got the Philadelphia Eagles 3-0 in the season taking on them Tampa Bay Bucks. It's probably the best game of the week from a matchup standpoint. Now, from the Buccaneers, they got Mike Evans. He's going to be out. I'm not sure when Chris Godwin will be back into the picture. It'll probably be next week for them. So they down a little bit on the offensive end. Bucky Irvin has had okay season so far. I got to shout out, man, to Ibuka, who's looking like a superstar and waiting so far for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers so far. And the Eagles, this is a team that we saw last week, finally showed that they're able to throw the football down the field, use those weapons, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts, it just seems like whenever people say, man, this guy just don't throw the ball, can't throw the ball, he give you a glimpse of what time it is. Saquon Barkley, he hasn't been, prime Saquon Barkley, but I think part of that has been just the defenses across the NFL just zeroing in on this guy, forcing the Philadelphia Eagles to beat you throwing the football. I think the Eagles is a team that at this point now, they really kind of getting into that mode. Defense is playing a little bit better as well. I got the Eagles in this one, even though this game will be played down in Raymond James Stadium. I had an opportunity, I think actually 2 seasons ago, went to the Tampa Bay Bucks training camp, adjacent to Raymond James Stadium. Good atmosphere down there in Tampa, man. They got a good fan base down there for the Buccaneers. This gonna be a tight one. This gonna be a tight one. In Philadelphia, they basically a 3.5 point favorite in this game. I think it will be just as close as this. I think that Todd Bowles is an underrated coach in the National Football League. So in this one, I think that the Eagles will be able to run the ball a little bit on the Buccaneers. I think we're going to see a little bit more of Saquon Barkley in this football game. I think that A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith will be involved as well. I think Jalen Hurts will be able to use his capability as well, make a couple plays. I think the defense plays well in this football game and probably have a turnover maybe, simply based on the fact that Tampa's a little undermanned right now. In this one, man, I got the Philadelphia Eagles winning this football game. I got it 27-21, the Eagles. And before we wrap up week number 4, we got to get into the matchup between two teams that one is in the AFC, one is in the NFC. We got the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Los Angeles Rams. This game will be played out in Inglewood at SoFi. Rams, this is a team that Sean McVay, they 2-1 on the year. Colts come in surprising everybody and their mama. 3-0 on the year. Danny Dimes, just the newest reclamation project of the NFL. We get one of these each year with a quarterback. This year is Danny Dimes. Jonathan Taylor looking like the best back in the National Football League. The Colts defense is playing, good this year. And so I'm liking what I'm seeing from Shane Steichen. Just the job that, they've been able to do, up in Indianapolis has been pristine so far. The Rams, they looking like the old Rams. They had an opportunity themselves, just try to knock off the Philadelphia Eagles, and they played a close game last week. But big time play by Jordan Davis to wrap that game up. And I think that the Rams, if they consider themselves Tier 1 in the National Football League, they had to win this football game against the Indianapolis Colts. For me, this is more of a statement game for the Rams, especially to a lot of people still iffy on the Colts. I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Colts. I just think that the Los Angeles Rams playing at home, man, I just think that they'll bring the Colts down to earth at least for a week. I like the running game from the Los Angeles Rams, Kyren Williams, Blake Corum getting a little bit more run. Matt Stafford looking like Matt Stafford. Devontae Adams, nice pickup for them. He's been playing some good football. Can't forget about Puka Nacua. This defensive team as well with Verse, just applying pressure, and McVay just doing what he do. I think that the Rams should win this football game. I got this game for the Rams in this one. I got this one actually 28-17. 20-17 Rams. I think they hold serve at home. Then we got the prime matchup. Really the prime matchup. This game is in the 425 slate on CBS. You know, Romo and, you know, them and Romo and my man Jim Nance is going to hold it down, man, on the telecast. But Chiefs 1-2 on the year. You know, they had a, you know, what I call a mercy victory against the New York Giants last week. The Baltimore Ravens coming in this game 1-2 as well. You know, had the debacle against Buffalo. We saw what it do last week with Derrick Henry fumbling the football once again in a primetime matchup, getting knocked off by the Detroit Lions and they building. This game right now, man, to quote Dwayne Martin from Above the Rim, this game is for bunks right here. Because I think that these teams, you go down 1-3 on the year, it's not promised about these playoffs. Plus, both these teams got a very difficult schedule coming up. So, this could be the season. And I think this would be the most exciting game through week number 4. You know, Patrick Mahomes, he gonna try to hold it down, man, while his guys are out. You know, they got, you know, a few people out. Obviously, Rashid Rice looked like word he's gonna play in this game. For the Baltimore Ravens standpoint, you know, they got to get that get back. Lamar Jackson, I really wasn't impressed by how he played last week as well against the Detroit Lions. This defensive, you know, team was, you know, defensive unit, was getting ran on all week, 250, you know, plus for the Detroit Lions last week. I ain't even gonna hold you, man. I just think that when these two teams match up, especially for the Baltimore Ravens, they know that the Chiefs is down, you know, as far as from a talent standpoint. Baltimore really primarily got all their guys. I'm not sure if Van Orr on the defensive side will be playing in this football game. And Matabuke, they was definitely missed last week. If they play in this game, even if they don't play in this game, I just think that the Baltimore Ravens win this game in the most exciting game we're going to have through week number 4 in the National Football League. I got the Baltimore Ravens winning this game 24-21. Last second field goal, I think, by the Baltimore Ravens just in this football game. And before we wrap it up, you know, I got to talk about my Chicago Bears. We traveling up to Las Vegas to take on them Raiders. Bears 1-2 on the year. Raiders 1-2 on the year. I think the Bears pull this victory out, man. Caleb Williams is finally in the groove. 4 touchdowns last week. I think the Raiders, Geno Smith is a turnover machine. You know, he can kill you some weeks and then turn it over in other weeks. You know, I think the Bears defense, even though we got some injuries, I think we'll step up to the plate just in regards. I got the Bears winning this football game, man, 24-17. And then we got them Packers and the Dallas Cowboys playing on Sunday night on NBC. Packers 2-1 on the year through the first 2 weeks of the season. A lot of people thought this was a Super Bowl contender. They took a L last week. You know, came down to earth. Jordan Love came down to earth. You know, they got stifled and got a little humble pie last week, so they trying to bounce back. The Dallas Cowboys, you know, this is a team that defense probably is the worst defense in the National Football League. Dak Prescott, you know, he got a cape on. You know, he's going to try to, you know, be able to put Dallas in a situation offensively where they can get over and get into a shootout situation, hopefully with the Packers, and be able to win it that way. You know, we got the big-time move with Micah Parsons traveling to Green Bay. You know, he coming back to Dallas. You know, there's going to be a lot of hoopla around this football game. We ain't going to hold you, man. We're going to get right into this one. I just think that the Packers be able to win this football game. They're a better football team. Defensively, they're a better team. I think that offensively, you know, especially with CeeDee Lamb being out in this game, I just think the edge go to the Packers with that. I think CeeDee is going to be missed more than what people kind of advertising, especially when he just, you know, literally just got up out of the lineup. So that's, you know, what we're looking at, man, through week number 4 across the National Football League slate. And, man, I can't wait till this week unfolds, man. Hope you guys, once again, enjoy what we have across the entire sporting landscape over the weekend. But week number 4 should be a doozy in the NFL. Coming up, the rest of the show, man. But until then, thanks for all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast. Before we get out of here, man, don't forget to check us out, man, on Facebook at We On Fire Sports Podcast. Also, too, on X or Twitter at We On Fire Sports. Man, we're also on YouTube. We're on Fox Sports Podcasts. And, man, I appreciate, man, you guys checking in with me and appreciate all the good gestures and feedback in relation to the show. We really do appreciate that around here. And before we get into my Big Five NFL Power Rankings, man, through week number 3 going into week number 4. First, I just want to comment on the game last night, man. We had a nice little tilt last night between the Arizona Cardinals. You know, they were a team that really, to me, I want to watch because I really hadn't had an opportunity to watch this team really in full so far this season. Take it on, obviously, the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks was able to win this game 23-20. You know, both these teams, to me, you know, I can kind of consider them an enigma because one, in relation to the Arizona Cardinals, you know, this is a team that we're kind of ready for this team to take the next step. Also, I was looking just like, what's up with Marvin Harrison going into the game? And Marvin Harrison, man, I mean, I don't know what was going on with Marvin Harrison. I mean, he made up for it, though, catching that touchdown from Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray is a guy that also, too, had a couple turnovers in this game. Both really are the interceptions, really wasn't his fault. You know, I'm kind of 50-50, man, on him from a standpoint of I'm just not sure if he's a guy that you can win with. Phenomenal talent, but I'm not sure if he's a guy that can kind of lead you to the promised land. We'll to be determined on that. But a good win for the Seattle Seahawks. A nice little victory for them. Sam Darnold, you know, had a pretty okay game for me. 242 yards and a touchdown. You know, Walker was being able to run the football. Charbonnet. So I like the little two-back situation they got in Seattle. Shout outs to them, man, on that game last night. And also, going into the weekend, man, we got a few little injuries as well. Jaden Daniels not going to play for the Washington Commanders. No, he's going to be out in this football game. We got guy coming off the mend. Brock Purdy will be in the lineup for the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. He's expected to play. You know, it's just been kind of nicked up city, man, for a few teams across the National Football League. So we'll definitely see what it do. Also, too, my man, Scary Terry McLaurin for the Commanders. He's going to be out as well. So we'll see what Washington is going to do, man, as they come down to the ATL and take on the Atlanta Falcons this weekend. But we're going to get into this Big Five now, man. We're going to get into this Big Five before we go ahead and wrap it on up. At number 5, you know, this is a team that's in the NFC North. This is a team that, you know, based on my allegiance to my Chicago Bears, really don't rock with them too hard. But I'm going to put them in at the 5 spot, and it's the Green Bay Packers. To me, they brought in Micah Parsons, you know, but the biggest question mark is Jordan Love. I'm just not still sold on Jordan Love. You know, he's an outstanding quarterback when there's no pressure and no heat on him. But I really hadn't seen him in situations to where, you know, when he play against these primetime teams and they make him get it out of the mud, I ain't seen him get it out the mud yet. Now, I know he had the big playoff game against the Dallas Cowboys, you know, last season. They got the Cowboys again coming in. Well, you know, a couple situations back, you know, in that playoff game, but they play them again this weekend. Another team that defense is straight up hot garbage. I think that the Packers and their offense will be able to pick up as they did from last week, but I got them coming in at number 5, man, on my Big 5 NFL Power Rankings through week number 3. At number 4, this is going to maybe surprise a few of y'all, because at number 4, man, I got the Tampa Bay Bucks coming in. And for me, it's not just that the Bucks are undefeated. This is a team that's able to win some grimy football games, and I know it's not been pretty. They hadn't really blown teams out, but this is a hurt football club. You got Mike Evans that's out. You know, Godwin, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to play this weekend. McMillan, the second-year receiver for them, is out. So this team really been nicked up, and Baker Mayfield, man, has just put, you know, this team on his back. Came out with the Superman, you know, cape. He's a little nicked up and iffy for Sunday as well. But I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Bucks, and Todd Bowles has been doing an outstanding job since he's taken over the helm down there in Tampa. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from Tampa this season, man. That to me is just really the biggest question mark about this football club is can they stay consistent defensively? Because you're going to have to be in some situations, especially if you're going deep into the playoffs, where you're going to have to play some real teams with real offenses. So that's the biggest question mark for me for the Bucks, but I got them coming in at number 4. At number 3, this is a team that a lot of people thought coming into this season they had a shot at maybe winning the AFC West. But I have this team winning the AFC West, and that's the Los Angeles Chargers. man, I just love the job that Jim Harbaugh has done this season. And he's taking the training wheels off Justin Herbert, even though Justin Herbert didn't really need any training wheels. Quentin Johnston is having a good season so far for them. Liking what I'm seeing on the defensive end from them as well. They got some old, veterans on the defensive side of the football, Khalil Max of the world and Derwin James and so forth for the world. So I'm liking what I'm seeing, man, from the Chargers so far this season. I do believe that they still may be in what I call the tier 2 of what you consider like contenders, but they could be pointing that arrow upward to get into that tier 1. We'll see what they do for the rest of the season. Man, number 2, man, to me, the 1 and 2 teams, you can kind of flip-flop them, but this is my big 5. So at number 2, man, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills at number 2. Bills, they have looked like the best team in the National Football League without question. Josh Allen has looked like the best quarterback in the league without question. I'm liking what I'm seeing from the defense, even though to me they still got a little meat on that bone on the defensive side. But, they're taking on all comers, and their schedule get a little harder. We're going to see some of these more heavyweight type of matchups, with the Buffalo Bills. But I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. I just want to see a little bit more what I call creativity, from the offensive end, some of those receivers. Like I said, Coleman, I think that this guy, he has to show me that he's a real number 1 receiver. The reason I say that is that if Josh Allen don't have a good game or, out there with the Superman cape, can this team beat upper echelon type of teams? That question is, remaining to be answered. So we'll see about that. But no, I got the Bills coming in at number 2, man. I'm liking what they're seeing. It looks like they may be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl later on this year. And at number 1, man, this is a team that, they win ugly. Some people don't even like how their offense was cracking the first couple of weeks of the season, but they continue to win. And it's the Philadelphia Eagles. I got the Eagles coming in at number 1, especially last week when I saw Jalen Hurts, just was throwing the football, and this team just kind of, kicking the tires on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, 2 Pro Bowl receivers. The talent is there in Philadelphia. It's just really a style of play with me for them. Big time clutch win, with that, block kick and return, last week. They showed what champions do, man, knocking off the LA Rams. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Eagles. I got my Eagles, or not my Eagles, but the Eagles coming in at number 1 on this Big 5 power rankings. So, man, we're going to go ahead and close it out with that, man. We appreciate you guys checking us out, man. We all over the place, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, with all podcasts you'll be listening to as well, especially on Podbean. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Let your head down, relax, do something productive, and most importantly, stay safe and kick it with your fam as always, man. So, first and foremost, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The Spot.